Hey everyone, Squee913 here. Welcome to another edition of Thoughts Behind the Wheel. Yeah, so, it's been a long day, I'm tired. I want to go home and, sleep or do stuff. What should I talk about? Oh yeah, I know what I was going to talk about. The other day, I was talking to my good friend Sparta, and we were talking, and I came up with an analogy. I've had this for a while, but it was the first time I ever actually got to use it in conversation. You ever have that? You come up with a philosophy or a really good analogy, but, conversations don't really come up where you can use it, and then finally, a year later, that conversation comes up. Or are you one of those people that'll worm it in there? That, you'll find a way, you'll modify the conversation just so that, oh, look, what a coincidence. I happen to have an analogy that would fit that situation perfectly, even though I was the one that brought the situation up. Wow. Funny how that works. No. I'm not that. I'm the kind of guy that I'll just sit there and wait patiently and not think about it. And then, a year later, that conversation will come and you'll be like, oh, I have an analogy for that. But no, it fit the conversation well. I'm not going to tell you what we were talking about, just stuff. And it had something to do with my philosophy on the Jedi and what was wrong with the Jedi. And I wanted to share this one, see what you guys thought of it. And maybe I'm wrong on this. I'm a Star Wars buff, but I'm not the end-all be-all for, Star Wars mythology. And so maybe this was addressed. Or explained somewhere, or maybe I'm right, I don't know. But here's my philosophy of what's wrong with the Jedi. How many of you have ever thought to yourself, damn, there are a lot of Jedi that fall to the dark side? I mean, a lot. We have a lot of, soldiers, but nowhere near that many defect, or whatever. Anyway, it's like every time you turn around, they're losing people to the Sith. And here's my thinking of why. Here's my philosophy. The Jedi, if you know anything about Star Wars, they favor the light side emotions, happiness, joy, wisdom, blah, blah, blah. And they absolutely hate they don't hate, they try to ignore the presence of, hatred, fear, anger, because those lead you to the dark side. Those emotions basically will drive you to go to the dark side. And so what they do, and this is their big problem, they try to pretend they don't exist or distance themselves from those emotions as much as possible. And their number one goal would be to never feel these emotions whatsoever, to just completely think these emotions don't exist, aren't a part of their life. They basically do everything and anything they can do to not have any connection whatsoever to these emotions, anger, fear, hatred, all of those. And that's their problem, I think. Because they try so hard and spend so much time trying to pretend these emotions don't exist and can't touch them, that when they inevitably do, and especially considering the fact of their line of work, they're peacekeepers, they're constantly in danger, they carry a freaking laser sword to protect themselves. It means people will die. And this will inevitably cause hurt and pain and sorrow, because no matter how much you want to be aloof, if you spend your entire life with people, humans are social animals. They will create friendships and bonds and connections. And when you lose those and when they break, every single person will feel anger, fear, hatred, all of these emotions. And the Jedi try so hard to pretend they don't exist or they can't touch on them, that when they eventually do face this situation where they lose a friend or something happens inevitably, and they feel these emotions, they have no idea how to handle them. They have spent their entire life trying to have nothing to do with them. So when they come, they're completely unprepared. They don't know how to deal with anger or hatred or fear, and it completely blows their minds. I honestly think that they're at more of a disadvantage than a normal person, because Sorry, had a phone call. Where was I? So, yeah, and I had to get gas. They don't know how to deal with it. I mean, think of it this way. If humans, us, we know how to deal with pain because we've experienced it our whole lives. You know, as a kid, you have bumps and bruises, and you stub your toe, and you maybe break a leg or two, and because of this, your body begins to build up a tolerance to pain. Now imagine if you'd gone your entire life living in a bubble, and you'd never broken a bone or cut yourself ever, and then finally you did. You would not know how to handle it. You would be rolling on the floor crying because it's this strange new sensation that's really horrible that you don't know how to handle or do anything with. Whereas someone else who has lived a normal life would be like, what? It's not that bad. So I feel the Jedi are much the same way. You know, a normal person has to deal with anger and fear and hatred and has to learn to not only incorporate them into their life, but to control and live with them and make sure that they don't take over 9 times out of 10. So I would say that, let's say 2 Jedi, one loses a friend. I would say a normal person has a better chance of dealing with it than this Jedi, because this Jedi has spent so much time trying to pretend no bad emotions will ever touch him. And when they finally do, he doesn't know how to handle this anger and fear and hatred that he's suddenly getting bombarded with, and he falls. His mind snaps and he falls to the dark side. And I also feel that this exact same thing works against them in the people who choose to go to the dark side. In other words, the ones that feel that the Jedi teacher is holding them back and they're not recognizing their true talents, and the dark side's so tempting, and they say it's bad, but it can't be that bad. Oh, sure, they say emotions and anger and fear and hatred are bad things, but it can't be that bad. And so they choose to go to the dark side. I think this is the same philosophy. If you tell someone fire is really bad, don't ever touch it, I mean, it might be kind of effective, but the reason why it's so effective is because most of us, at some point in our life, got burned a little bit. We touched a stove, we got too close to a campfire, something, and we got a small burn, or for a few of us, maybe a big burn. But in any case, most of us at some point in our life got a burn, realized, holy crap, this hurts like hell, I should not touch fire. If you had never done that in your entire life, or never seen that, or, and never really experienced it, you wouldn't have the same effect. You would be thinking, I know they say it's bad, but come on, really, how bad could it be? Look, it's very bright and shiny, and it gives warmth. How bad of a thing could it really be? So I think it's the same thing. Because a lot of Jedi never really experience, or do their best not to experience, fear and anger and hatred, they don't understand how powerful those emotions can really be. Because they've been told that, and they may have experienced small versions of it before they learn to control it and not let it touch them. But they've never experienced true anger and true fear the way a lot of normal people have. And so I think they don't really understand just how dangerous it can be, and thus they let it tempt them and let them fall to the dark side. So personally, I think if Jedi had taken a different approach of, let's try to understand fear, hatred, and anger, and learn to control it and not let it control us, there would be far fewer fallen Jedi. That's just my theory, my opinion. It's not worth much, I know, but still. And I could be wrong. Perhaps someone explains somewhere that they do this kind of thing or whatnot. And I would assume that the pull to the dark side, for example, I understand that there's probably an added danger. Like, if my closest friend dies, I'm going to feel just as an intense amount of fear, anger, and hatred that a Jedi would, but I don't have to fear the dark side tugging me down. I think the Jedi also have, they have to feel all these emotions, plus there's the dark side that's trying to make it worse and trying to pull them down, which I, a non-Force user, wouldn't have to deal with. But that doesn't negate the fact that I think the Jedi would be able to handle these things much better if they learn to handle these emotions instead of trying to pretend they don't affect them. Yeah, so, anyway. It reminds me of, you guys ever seen that Plinkett review of Star Wars prequels? One of these days, and Inferno, if you're listening, we should do this. One of these days, we should watch that. Maybe stream it or something. Oh, gosh. Then again, I don't know if we could stream that. I mean, I guess. Maybe we could. Anyway, stream his reviews or whatever, or watch his views. Maybe just record it, you and I. Watch his reviews and debate them, because while I will say that if you haven't seen Plinkett's reviews of Star Wars, basically he's a guy, a Red Letter Media, a guy, his character's name is Plinkett, pretends to be an old man. Some of his humor is very tasteless. A lot of like rape jokes and stuff that you kind of have to be like, whoa, let's just forget that part. But his actual analysis is very in-depth. Not 100% right in my view, but he does make some really outstanding points as to why those movies have huge flaws. But I don't think the movies are the absolute crap he does. I think despite these flaws, I think that a lot of arguments he made for it were not correct or unfair to make of the movie. Like, for example, he's sitting there going, you know, Naboo is being blocked by the Trade Federation. I don't understand. Why would a Trade Federation want to blockade trade? You know, and most people are like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Until you really think about it and you go, well, it's a Trade Federation, not the leaders of all trade everywhere. It's not like they control every aspect of trade. They could be blockading that world because that world was trading with someone who was not them. So, I mean, and he's like, aren't they part of the government? No, there's nothing in there saying they're part of the government, just that they're a federation of traders, not the government. You know, it's not like they're the Trade Federation Department of Trade or something for the Republic. So I think a lot of his arguments are misleading, and I think it would be fun to watch those and debate them. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of them are really good arguments, but there are some, like, in the second one, he talks about how ridiculous it is that Yoda would have a lightsaber, because he's supposed to be this wise Jedi, and the very design of the lightsaber automatically puts him at a disadvantage because he's shorter and smaller, and he doesn't have the reach that Count Dooku does, or the strength that Count Dooku does. So why would this wise Jedi engage in combat that he's naturally at a disadvantage in with lightsaber to lightsaber combat? And that he just doesn't know what he's talking about there. Yoda was not at a disadvantage at all. You could clearly see Yoda was not at a disadvantage. In fact, you could even argue that Dooku was the one at a disadvantage because he did not have the speed, agility, and maneuverability that Yoda had. Sure, Yoda's lightsaber is smaller. So what? Sometimes a smaller weapon's the better choice, and speed and maneuverability can almost always defeat strength and power. The movie clearly showed that Yoda was, even though he was a smaller character, his lightsaber didn't have the reach that Dooku did. His ability to use the Force to make him maneuverable, flexible, bouncy, kangaroo-style Yoda, whatever, you understand what I'm saying, obviously did not put him at any sort of disadvantage. Just because you fight with a different style does not mean that you're necessarily inferior to someone else. And the movie would show over and over again, even in the third one, he was at no disadvantage whatsoever with that lightsaber. So that's, again, an argument that's just, once you think about it, you're like, eh. So I think that it would be kind of fun to Inferno, if you're watching, you and I, because Inferno and I have had debates on this, and I think it would be really fun for us to sit down and do sometime. Maybe not stream it, I don't know, because, you know, we didn't try one thing one time that got shut down in 5 minutes. But I don't know, do something like that. Anywho, I'm home. I'm gonna go, what's that thing they call? Oh, yeah, beat myself into unconsciousness. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.